Hey folks, welcome to ADSR. I'm Stephen Ellestad. Make sure you subscribe to the ADSR YouTube channel and follow on social media for great production content. So I wanted to put together a little production concepts tutorial. It's actually a two-part tutorial looking at group mixing and working with mixed groups, because I find that especially for beginner or intermediate students, it can be kind of a weird concept because they don't necessarily know all the things they can do with mixed groups and how they can help organize the session as well as give different levels of processing and mixing ability. And so mixed groups conceptually are pretty simple. It's taking a number of individual tracks and then routing them together into a channel using a bus. And that's a stereo group. It's usually an auxiliary channel in most DAWs. Logic is going to handle a little differently. You can still do manual routing in Logic, but it's generally easier to use what they call track stacks. And then all of the individual groups are going to route to the master bus. And so instead of having, say, your kick drum and your bass and your hi-hat individually going to the master bus, they're going to go to, say, a drum group or an instrumental group or what have you. And then that group itself will route to the master bus. The benefit of that is that we can take the mix up to a higher level of organization and balance things inside of a particular group, and then balance the groups against each other. If you're looking for a really in-depth look at this, check out my Power Mixing in Logic course on ADSRsounds.com. But to do this in Logic, to set it up, I've got this session. This is, in fact, the session that I use in that Power Mixing course. I've got a number of different groups already set up, including, we can see the drummer track has things like kick in, kick out, hi-hat, etc. And they're all routed up into the drummer track, and that's actually a mixed group. I've also organized this session. There's a percussion group, the upright bass by itself because I only have one bass, continuous elements, horns, accent elements, etc. And to set one up tutorial-wise, I'll just show you this. I have my 4 different effects returns, and I want to create one group called effects. In most DAWs, you need to go to the output and then route it specifically to a new auxiliary channel. Logic actually simplifies that with track stacks. Typically, you're going to just do Shift-Command-D or go into track and create track stack. But Logic does get a little weird if these do not exist in the arrange window. So before I do that, I'm going to hit Control-T and just insert them into the arrange window. Let me move that back up there. And now I can select all 4 of these and do my key command, Shift-Command-D. And I have 2 different options. One's a folder stack, which is really an organizational thing and not actually routing any audio. Instead, we're going to choose a summing stack. And you can see it gives you details right here talking about what's going on. But it mixes its subtracks and can be saved as a patch. So once you've got a basic, say, effects routing or something, you can actually save this mix group and have one that you call up every time in every mix. And that can be very, very useful. But anyway, we'll go ahead and hit create. And so now we can see that I've got this sum track. And I'm just going to go ahead and name that FX. And I like to go ahead and color code as well. So I'll select all of these. That just shows me what I got and just recolor that. But now I've got a group that has my effects as well. When we look at this now, why are mixed groups useful? Well, first we can obviously group sounds or mix elements together. All of our drums. What we've got in this session is exactly that. My drummer tracks, all of those are being mixed together. Then I've got a setup of all my different percussion elements. So we'll solo this out. And then we can see that we can solo, say, just the drums and just the percussion. And it's a real simple way to hear a whole bunch of elements in our mix while excluding others. We just keep on going like that, looking at the organization. I have here continuous elements. So it doesn't always have to be specific like parts of an instrument. But continuous elements, in this case, includes things like some strings, an electric piano, some vibes, things that are fulfilling the role of somewhere between a keyboard and a pad, you know, kind of holding on. Mostly because I think I want to treat them in the mix in a similar fashion. And we can treat multiple elements together using these mixed groups. So for example, in my next group, in this one, I have horns here, but I also have accent elements. And these are some parts that just come up during parts of the song. I wanted to treat them similarly because if you listen here, I've got them balanced against different sides of the stereo field. But because they both have a sharp attack and kind of this percussive rhythmic sound, even though they're not percussion instruments, I felt they were a good candidate to be grouped together and treated as an accent element. So really it's up to you how you want to treat these groupings. But as long as you have a consistent logic that makes sense to you, then give it a shot. We can, as we see, group things up by type, whether they're drums or synths or vocals. In fact, we can even nest them. So you can have a track of a couple sets of background vocals that feeds into a group called vocals. You can also have the lead vocals, the chorus doubles or what have you, also feeding into that same vocal group. So you can have two different groups of vocals that then feed into a single group of all vocals. And this just gives us lots of levels of different ways to control, to mute, to solo, and to process each of those different levels. And then again, we can look at things by role, which is a lot of what we're doing here. I've got these continuous elements, these accent elements, and these are the way I'm personally, as a mix engineer, thinking about parts of this song and how I want to approach it. So how you choose to do your grouping can really inform kind of the creative aspects of your mixing process. What else we can do here is a lot of what's called parallel processing. And parallel processing is taking a copy of a signal and routing it into a group and applying a lot of different types of effects, but typically compression or say saturation. And the reason we do this is it lets us blend this raw, natural, rich, uncompressed sound, but still bring in heavy, punchy, tight sound and blend them together to either change over the course of the song or just to add a little bit of edge while still keeping that big fatness. For example, if we wanted to do that, we could just come in here and create a send, and we'll say we'll put our drums and our percussion in our upright, and I'll just come over here and create a send to a new bus. We'll call it bus 11. We're just going to go ahead and hit option to send at unity gain. I'm just going to call this PCMP for parallel compression. And in fact, we will solo out just these three. And now I'm just going to add a pretty aggressive compression. So we can go far higher than our normal compression levels because we're just going to be blending that in conjunction with the raw signals. We can hear that I've got this nice round organic kind of sound here, but then when I can bring in this really more aggressive parallel compression, and we can blend that against the raw signals. And we can do this with all types of different effects. Most of our stereo time-based effects like delays and reverbs are already going to be coming in as parallel processes. But generally when people talk about parallel processing, they're talking about parallel compression or parallel saturation. But that gives you a sense here. There's lots of great articles and tutorials on parallel compression on ADSR and elsewhere on the internet. If you're interested in that, definitely dive more into that. Do a little bit of research. Parallel compression is just a really common and powerful way of using parallel processing, and it's a group level thing because we've created a separate group of sounds that we're sending and treating together as a group rather than individually, and we're blending that back in with our pre-existing tracks or groups. And once we do create these groups, the basic workflow is pretty simple. We go to, say, our drums and balance the sound of the drums themselves. And then we go to our percussion and balance the percussion elements inside that group, etc., etc. And then we just balance the groups against each other and use a bunch of different equalization and dynamics processing, first to the groups, but then if necessary to the parts to get the sounds we're looking for. But it's given us this second level of control that we can use to really shape and develop the sound of our mix. So that's a good introduction to group mixing. In part 2, we'll take a look at some more advanced uses. So thanks for checking out this video. I'll see you in the next one. I'm Stephen Ellestad for ADSR. Make sure you subscribe to the ADSR YouTube channel. Have a great day. Take care.